Thank you for watching the latest video in our conference conversation series curated by Eastern Region President-elect Amanda Hanslick. My name is Chris Kiver. I'm the president of the ACDA Eastern Region, and today I'm delighted to have the opportunity to chat with one of the United States' leading conductors, Donald Nally. Donald is the John W. Beatty Chair of Music Professor and Director of Choral Organizations at the Beanan School of Music at Northwestern on the outskirts of Chicago. He's enjoyed extensive career at the highest level, collaborating with renowned ensembles such as the LA Phil and New York Phil, among many others. He's best known to choral musicians as the founder and director of The Crossing, a professional choir who have commissioned almost 160 new compositions and released 29 recordings, 8 of which were nominated for Grammy Awards, with 3 winning the Best Choral Performance category in 2018, 2019, and just last week. Congratulations for that most recent win, Donald. And that one was for the album Born, the music of Edie Hill and Michael Gilbertson, available from all places where you would normally buy recordings. For those of you attending the national conference at the end of the month, you'll get to hear Donald in The Crossing with the headliner concerts at 8 p.m. on the Friday and Saturday evenings. Donald, welcome, and thank you for making the time to help us just get to know you a little bit better ahead of the national conference. So,
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's good to have you here. Just starting off with some questions. So now obviously you're based in Chicago, but can you tell us what your connection is to the Eastern region?
Yeah, I grew up in southeastern Pennsylvania, though it's in Bucks County, but it's a real coincidence that I wound up there because after I finished my doctoral studies, there were these 2 jobs that were open, Westchester University and the Opera Company of Philadelphia, and they were the things that I wanted to do at the time. And so I wound up spending 11 years in Philadelphia, subsequently doing lots of other things, and really made roots there, as a kind of like an adult. And so, I've lived there a few times since then. I had this kind of back and forth with Chicago, where I've lived in Chicago and I've lived in Philly and I lived in Chicago and et cetera. I'm in my last year at Northwestern right now, so I've already moved back to Philadelphia. And I'm kind of a guest here. Actually, right now I'm in Wichita, I'm in an Airbnb, which is why we have this lovely cow and other questionable wall hangings. So yeah, I lived in Wales for a while, then I moved back to Philadelphia, and so I just have these long artistic and personal friendships and relationships there that have sustained me.
Terrific. Can you tell us a little bit about The Crossing, maybe how the group came into being, who the membership consists of, and also the mission of the group?
Yeah, so I'm as I said before, I moved to Wales and I started working at Welsh National Opera as the chorus master. And I was back one summer and I was sitting having a beer with a few friends, and we were kind of lamenting the fact that even though we liked what we were doing, which was very different than what we had done together in Philadelphia, we really missed the kind of music making that we made together in Philadelphia. And I didn't really have any new music in my life, and I really missed that. And so we decided to put a concert on just for the heck of it. And we wrote to 18 friends because by then a lot of them had moved away, and invited them to come back, and we put together a concert and it went really well. And we didn't expect that anybody would come, and a whole bunch of people came. And so then my co-founder, Jeff Dinsmore, he said, when are we going to do it again? And so then the next year we did 2, and the next year we did 3, and kind of here we are,
So what year was that when you started?
2005.
Okay.
And we quickly expanded to 24 because we knew that the type of music that we wanted to do, the textures and the divisi, were going to sort of require us to have 6 in each section. And it's always been a group that is based on community. It's really heavily based on who's in the room. And so even today, just like it was in the beginning, probably roughly 2/3 of them live in the Philadelphia area and another third come from elsewhere.
Okay. Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit about the mission of the group?
Yeah. Sorry, you asked me to do that. We are interested in making a record of the time. We are here. This is what it feels like to be here. Or maybe in the future, we were here and this is what it felt like to be here. And expanding the canon in ways that not only tell the stories of our time and really capture things that we feel are relevant. So therefore that delves a lot into social issues and social justice issues. And, we've made numerous pieces about wealth distribution and climate change in the environment and gun violence. And, the list goes on, the pandemic, and just asking questions like we don't think that we know the answers to these things. We're artists. We're not politicians or priests. And so we ask a lot of questions in the music that we do. And that way we want to encourage composers to maybe think a little differently about the way in which they compose for voices, and then for singers to think a little differently about the way in which they sing in choirs, and for audiences to maybe listen a little differently than they have, all by way of expanding an American repertoire of choral music.
Yeah, yeah. And certainly your mission really fits beautifully with ACDA's current move towards better diversity and wider inclusion. So it's going to be exciting to hear those concerts. So speaking about Cincinnati, so your program includes 5 works by Caroline Shaw, I believe that's a new work, Shara Nova, Ayana Woods. Then there's the 2023 ACDA Raymond Brock Commission by Jennifer Higdon. Then excerpts from Edie Hill's Spectral Spirits, which is actually on the recent Grammy-winning CD. So from reading a little bit about the composers, this looks like it's going to be an eclectic program. Can you tell us what we can expect from the program? Maybe musical styles or staging?
Stylistically, it is all over the place. I mean, Sharonova, has her own thing that, classically trained musician who has a whole life in the indie pop world, very successful with My Brightest Diamond. And Caroline's music has gone more and more away from so-called like a classical style, whatever that means today. I don't know what that means anymore. And Edie's is like textured and complex, and like really raw at times. And then Ayana's, is a really personal view of the world. Her piece is about, it starts out with references to unfair police practices with Black people, and moves into why we have monuments that we can't seem to let go of, and ends in this really like affirming, we are bound to celebrate the work of our ancestors and to make change. Edie's piece is about extinct birds, and it's based on Holly Hughes's poetry, and it's a big lament, but it is not without its own anger and sort of an unofficial call to arms, and I'm really interested in music like that, and everybody in the group is as well. So yeah, it's a real journey. I've arranged it into a kind of its own story, and it'll be a full evening.
Great. Now, knowing this is just an intimate conversation between you and me, no one else is going to listen to this. Do you have a particular work on the program that is your favorite or you're more excited to share with the ACDA crowd?
Well, if it's just between us, why are we recording?
You certainly don't have to answer.
I'm a little confused. No, I don't have a favorite. These composers, I think I'm the most fortunate person ever, because I spend every day talking with creative people, and mainly composers, um, and they do have this way of contextualizing really difficult questions and presenting things that are essentially just facts, but in ways that allow us to consider our role in them, to find our own story in the story, which again, I feel like, the primary thing that choral musicians do is tell stories. And so I mean, I could talk about this. Literally, we could talk about these pieces, the length of the concert, right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to stop there and say, I'm just excited for every one of them.
Great, great. And so that's a nice segue to the next question I was going to ask, which is maybe if you could give sort of a brief overview of how for you the commissioning process works. So obviously there are composers and performers who you admire. What's that initial conversation? And then do you sort of offer texts, and do you play a part in saying, we would like the music to be, or do you pretty much leave the composer to it?
No, I do not leave the composer to it
Okay.
at all.
Uh-huh.
Because I know our audience, and I know our singers, and our singers know our audience, and we know the kinds of conversations that they want to have or are interested in, and basically, that's because those are the conversations we want to have. We've basically done whatever we want, and the audience members who are really interested in that have hung around, so. The commissioning process, for me, it begins with an idea, a few years out, of what we would like to talk about that season, or if there's a major project within that season. Because I try to construct our seasons so that if you go to every concert, at the end of it, you'll go, oh, I get it. And if you go to one concert, at the end of it, you'll go, oh, I get it, because they're like chapters within a book, and the book is the season, and the chapters are the concerts, and so they have some kind of running theme. 1 year it was diaspora, and 1 year it was trees, and our relationship to them, climate, and all that kind of stuff. And then we start to hone in on, like, well, who would be, what specific project do we want? Like right now we're working in June, we're doing this huge project with Ted Hearn. It's called Farming, and it's out in the middle of a field in Bucks County, where the concerts are next to, literally in touching distance of crops. And so, back that way up to the idea of, all right, we're going to talk about land and ownership, and how do we do that? Who's the right person? And we decided Ted was the right person. He was like, great, and then we developed, and then down the line that develops through text, what we're interested in, what he's interested in. And then we say, like, okay, we got this, we have a concept of what this is going to be like. Now I'm going to stop talking, and send me the piece when you're done, But the initial part of it is really very hands-on.
Yeah, and this is fascinating conversation. Again, we talk about this for a long time, but do you have maybe sort of an artistic board or a small group that helps you with this, or is it pretty much the conversation between you and the composer?
It's mostly the conversation with me and the composer, but our staff is really closely knit. So Jonathan, our executive director, Kevin, our assistant conductor, and artistic associate, Shannon, our operations person, I'm a collaborator, and we do everything together. I will say also that when we're looking at composers, I'm really interested in people who are like, yeah, they're interested in asking questions about the world we live in, but they're also interested in asking questions about what actually composition is, and what role does music play in our lives, and I think that's constantly changing. And to quote my friend David Lang, a piece of music ought to change us. And I honestly believe that, whether we know it, viscerally, or whether it's a background sort of thing, the way in which we recognize ourselves in the stories that are being told, in the singing that is being done, that is paramount to what we're doing, to what we do when we actually, the question, I'm constantly asking the question, what are we doing when we get up on in front of people and sing. What is that? Why do people pay money to come to that? And it is connection. It's understanding.
Connecting what's going on in the world to what's going on in the concert hall, maybe.
But I think it's also recognize ourselves in what's going on in the concert hall, like what's to say, to go, if art is supposed to define and describe our world, then the people observing the art are probably going to recognize themselves in that world, and that's where the understanding, I guess, mutual understanding comes in. So I don't know, that's like way off from your question. Sorry.
No, it's fascinating, and I'm sure our members will really help them to appreciate the music they're going to hear from you in the crossing. And we're certainly very proud that, excuse me, you'll be representing the Eastern region. And so now here are some the quick fire round that we've been doing. And so, do you feel you're ready for this?
Oh boy, should I get more coffee? I don't know. Let me just.
Well, here we go. So, which was the choral piece or choral experience that fired your imagination and led you to a career in choral music?
Oh my, are you serious?
You can only pick one.
I don't know. I'm old. Look, you're asking me about something in the last century. I will say that when I was at undergrad at CCM, which, by the way, going to Cincinnati, I have this whole history with Cincinnati. So I think it's really great that we're going to do these concerts in Cincinnati. So when I was an undergrad at CCM, Elmer Thomas was the conductor, and I just adored him. And I was one of just a few undergrads in this choir that was mostly graduate students. I felt like, I was like this little tiny, twig amongst these big tall trees. We went to New Orleans and we did Misa Solemnis with Robert Shaw and I think 4 other college choirs, and I think the Atlanta Symphony came. That's a little vague in my head. And we rehearsed all week, and typical Shaw, he's grunting and he's doing his thing, and there's like the room is packed with observers going like, oh, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Shaw. But I had, obviously I'd never done a piece of music like that, and that piece is, for the beginners, that piece is the little like, Mount Everest. You feel like, all right, climbing up here, figuring out how to do stuff. So that experience, you subsequently, there's a lot about Robert Shaw's approach that I embraced, and there's a lot about his approach that I rejected over the years. But that experience, really left an indelible mark on me. And it's kind of interesting that, then my life went into opera and new music, and you know what I mean? Like, and Misa Solemnis has been left in the, the rearview mirror. But anyway.
Yeah. So here's a loaded question. Which is your favorite state in the Eastern region and why?
Well, there can be only one. Well, since I'm from Pennsylvania, I should probably sarcastically say New Jersey first, but I won't. And it has to be Pennsylvania, right? Like,
Absolutely.
I grew up in farmland there. I love the area that I grew up in. My husband's even and I have own a house there now, and we love where we live, and of course, Philadelphia has been very, very generous to me through the opera company, through St. Mark's Church, through the Choral Arts Society of Philadelphia, through the Bridge Ensemble, through the Crossing. I have all these different things that I've done there. I used to take a Philadelphia group to Spoleto, Italy in the summers to do the festival. And I have this huge, long, fantastic history there. And honestly, the audience that is the Crossing audience that in Philadelphia, they've made us, we wouldn't exist without. They're just kind of coming along and going, I don't know what I'm going to hear because it's never been sung before, but I'm in, so Pennsylvania.
Good, and apologies to New Jersey, but not really. So, when you're not conducting, teaching, and winning Grammys, what do you do to relax?
I don't. There is no time to. I read. I just finished the two Cormac McCarthy books that he released in November and December. Absolutely an incredible journey. In fact, I love the second one so much I started it over. We don't have a lot of time, and when we do, my Stephen and I try to just take off and go somewhere for a little ways, and whether that just be the ocean or something like that, and then we also like to cook. But I really like working. It's one of my happy places.
That's great. That's great. Now, last question for you, and this might be more for the sort of wider membership than for you. I had this as a question because, excuse me, my oldest daughter lives in Cincinnati, and we've always been told that we need to go to Skyline Chili. So for our Eastern Region membership, if you go to Cincinnati, they have this thing called Skyline Chili. So, Donald, the big question, have you eaten at Skyline Chili, and what do you think?
So I have a very vague memory. So I became a vegetarian when I was in undergraduate school, and I've been a vegetarian ever since. So I have a very vague memory. It's probably vague because it was undoubtedly alcohol induced or involved, of like late night going to Skyline, and but that kind of food is not my thing. And nothing against the venerable Skyline. I'm sure it's absolutely fantastic. It doesn't look terribly appetizing to me when they put like the 5-way, and you got the onions and the cheese and I think the chili and all that stuff. It's just, ugh, that's not for me. But by all means, go.
Yeah, so after the Friday night and Saturday night concerts, everyone head off to Skyline Chili.
Well, there's also Grader's ice cream, right? So Grader's ice cream is like the institution in Cincinnati, and that I spent way too much time at Grader's ice cream when I was an undergrad. So
yes, I can certainly testify to that. But who would have thought this choral conversations time together would end up talking about Skyline Chili and Grader's ice cream? But Donald, we're so grateful to you for your time, and this has been a delight to speak with you, and we wish you and the Crossing all the very best for your participation at the National Conference.
thank you.
Thanks, Donald.